So we had an interesting mix of people that were interested in this, including some folks that are not charter school people. Actually, like quite a few folks from HISD, from Houston ISD, wanted to join this conversation. So I think it's really, really interesting. We even mostly only invited charter school people. So it was pretty cool to see that some public school people really want to join. So maybe they're particularly interested in you guys or your schools. But just letting you know that we will have a mix of public people, public school folks and charter school folks on this call.
Okay.
Which is really neat.
Yeah.
Hey, Corbett.
Hello, hello, good morning or good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm wonderful, and yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. I think we're just waiting on Kerry to join, but I want to give a minute to let you guys all meet each other. So maybe Kathryn, Kristin, and Corbett, have you guys run in circles before together?
Kathryn, for sure. Corbett, I think
I have, for sure.
nice to see you. I was so happy to see your name on here.
Always good to see you too.
And
Good to
Corbett,
see you with something that we're not fussing about.
right? Indeed.
If you're not fussing, well, you're probably not fighting hard enough, I'd say. So don't worry about that. I'm a fusser too. But just so you all know, and hopefully we'll give this vibe when we have the conversation, but I like to say it at a time, this is definitely a conversation. So even though I'll pose questions for people, you can jump in, you can, lead off of someone else's topic. That goes for you too, Jordan. So just know that it will be, once we get to the panel portion, which is about 10 minutes in, it will be very much a space for you to feel free to comment on things that are compelling to you. Whether or not I've addressed you specifically. And then Kristin had let us know ahead of time that she has another obligation where she might have to hop off about 10 minutes early. So just so you all know, that'll happen as well at the end of the meeting. Awesome. Any questions for me before we get going?
No.
Jasmine, can you show your face for a second? Would you like to? I would love for them to see you and know you. I know Kathryn and Corbett may actually already know you.
Yes, I know Kathryn. I'm just trying to resituate and get my laptop plugged in, but I'll show you face in just a second.
Cool. Yes. So Jasmine Blue, long been my counterpoint and counterpart in everything. She's amazing. So she's organizing some stuff, but Jasmine will be helping with the chat, fielding questions, things like that. So she'll also be a part of our team today. Jasmine, if you get a chance, could you maybe check in with Kerry? Or Jordan, if you could maybe ping her on our Slack channel.
Yeah.
If she's not able to make it, I'll be able to take her part, but just to check. Hey, Jasmine, there you are.
Hey, everyone. My lighting's not amazing right now. I'm not in my typical Zoom environment. But like Caitlin said, I'll be helping manage the chat, building out questions, and making sure everything runs smooth with Zoom. So I'll be in the background. But it's good to see you, Principal Procope. Nice to meet you, Corbett, and good to see you, Kristin. Nice to kind of meet you as well.
Yay. Thanks, Jasmine. And hopefully we'll have folks start to show pretty soon. We'll start to let them in.
Caitlin, I can say start webinar since the practice session was going, so I'll go ahead and click start.
Awesome. Thanks, Jasmine. Awesome. Corbett, how long have you been principal?
This is year 2.
Ooh, year 2. Amazing. You have quite a presence online. Very influential guy.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's fun to see. It's fun to see like the updates you and Kathryn do routinely, your videos and stuff. Hi, everybody. How's it going? Excited to see you. Hi, Alyssa. Welcome, Kerry. Welcome, Catalina and Chelsea. Hi, Crystal. Please drop your name in the chat as well as the school that you're coming from. We would love to learn more about you. Hi, Miss Smith. Hey there, Bonnie and Sarah. All right, I see more members of the Mundo Verde team as well. Super great to have you guys supporting today. Very excited to see everybody. We'll give everybody a few minutes. Hi, Shawnee, our CEO Shawnee's joined as well. No, everybody's really excited to hear these leaders speak. So welcome, welcome. It's a cold, cold day where most of us are, I think, no matter where that is. Yeah, Kathryn shaking her head, absolutely. So we're happy that you've joined. I know some schools are closed too, so thank you so much for joining. And if you'll put your name in the chat and the place that you are joining us from, I'll call out a few schools here. Awesome. Yes, we've got Kairos Academy in St. Louis. Odella. Hi there. Hi, everybody. Denver, Colorado representing. Catalina from HISD. Awesome. Thanks. Yes, we're super excited to see some HISD face folks on. Amazing. We'll give it just a couple more minutes to have folks join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. We'll have an intimate and wonderful conversation today. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Super excited to see you. If you haven't had an opportunity to put your name and the name of your school, district, or organization in the chat, we would love to see where everybody is calling in from, and we're really happy to have you as part of the group today. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm Caitlin Churchill. I am Possip's Director of Community, and I'm your moderator today. We're here today to talk about a protocol for using family feedback in planning school improvement projects. I don't usually do this, but today I felt really compelled to start with a little personal story as we talk about using feedback for school improvement projects. I used to be in the Peace Corps. I served in the country of Georgia in Europe, and that experience made some project planning lessons very, very clear to me in ways that I had never known before. I've learned that before I could make any kind of impact, I had to learn what the community needed and wanted and elevate their feedback for trust and support. Without that support and enthusiasm, there were times that I saw projects I was really passionate about become lonely and unsustainable. So this is a particularly important conversation to me too. Even though that was an extreme experience, the lessons hold true and I think translate to our schools as well, that the most successful projects are those where the need and the objective and the commitment is shared, known, and expressed by the wider and broader community. We love this framing from one of our other charter school partners, Trevor Ivey, who's the executive director at Liberty STEAM Charter School. His team's worked really hard to create a culture of feedback, and you can see here his quote, that they just continuously emphasize with their families, we're only getting better if we get your feedback, and they make it really clear to folks, even through enrollment and recruiting, that they believe and lead with the idea that feedback is a gift. So even though my experience was really specific and I had to do things like have very sparsely attended meetings and have a translator, and I drank lots and lots of coffee in many, many homes every day, I wish that in that experience, I could have had an easy way to gather data. The relationship building was imperative, but the idea of gathering data from hundreds of people to inform work in a very quick and easy way would have really been a game changer. And that's what Possip can do. So for some folks who aren't as familiar with Possip, I'll take a moment to just share that routine pulse checks are a way for schools and districts to engage their communities and to learn the priorities of a diverse set of people. We'll hear from school leaders today about what that experience is like when it's embedded in their schools. But we just wanted to share that this is a way through routine feedback to bring parents, staff, or students to the table and to have their priorities be top of mind in your conversations, especially when approaching school improvement projects. So Pulse checks are routine, short questions sent by text message in a preferred language. And in 1 minute, the pulse check asks questions like, are you happy with school this week? Do you have praise to share? Do you have any needs? As well as custom questions that can help you learn about specific needs or preferences related to the projects you're working on. We often send these pulse checks bi-weekly or monthly so that people have many opportunities to engage. And within a few days of each pulse check, principals get a report surfacing quotes of praise and questions and expressed needs. Our team of reporters will turn that feedback into quantitative trends so that schools can see what's emerging over time from a trends lens, and districts can see comparative data school by school. So we wanted to take a moment to consider what you think are areas that parents most often weigh in on when it comes to school improvement. We have all this knowledge through the pulse checks of what people tend to weigh in on. So Jasmine has just launched a poll asking this question: what do you think parents most often weigh in on when they are given the chance? What is kind of the category it rolls into? So we're seeing the feedback roll in, and I'm very excited to share everyone's answers. Thank you so much for your participation here. We'll give that a couple more minutes. Awesome. Yeah, this is really interesting. Still have some people responding, so we'll give it a few more seconds here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So I'm going to share those results, and you should be able to see the results. But what came in from our audience, about 14% of people believe that parents most often are weighing in on operations. About 9% said academics, 64% said teachers and staff, and 14% said community and culture. So none of you are wrong. These are all areas where parents weigh in heavily, and it could, of course, depend on your school environment as to what comes up. But I do want to just share some of the stats on what our data shows among 1 million parents and over 1,300 schools in the 5 years that we've been doing pulse checks. We show that parents most often weigh in on school operations. In 2021, a very specific kind of circumstance, parents use Possip to communicate about operations more than any other category, which we might expect. It was about 45% of all praise and feedback. But what is significant is that this trend was true before the pandemic, and it's persisted since. Approximately half of all parent comments that have come in through Possip have been comments related to operations. So I threw in a snapshot here of data, recent data on that breakdown. And you can see that among these categories we polled on, operations, teacher, community and culture, and academics, about half of the comments are about operations. And that includes both feedback and praise. So we also know that teachers and staff are weighing in on these comments just as frequently, and operations is important to everyone in the school building. This makes sense because the operations category involves situations that are most visible to parents and staff. It shows up in their everyday experience. So what's interesting is that schools with lower happiness tend to have more feedback on operations than schools with higher happiness. While operations is always prevalent, our data shows that as happiness increases or reported levels of happiness increase, feedback on operations decreases and praise on operations increases. So there will still be a lot of feedback and praise coming in, but the feedback and praise may shift according to parent happiness ratings. Knowing that this is true, we think is a point of empowerment. We know that in education, so much feels out of our control, and there's so many barriers that we're working through all the time and learning about, but operations are tangible and solvable in many ways. And so we frame this trend as an opportunity to prioritize operations and to improve relationships and overall happiness in doing so. Partnering schools and districts have used the Pulse Check to prepare for school improvement projects and operational projects in lots of areas. It comes up in car line, in after school programs, in scheduling, in safety projects and protocols. We love the quotes here from a couple charter school partners. We do, of course, work with all kinds of public schools as well, but we wanted to elevate the words of Lanisha Roberts, as well as our partner, Kaylee at Etoile. So Lanisha points out that for them, their feedback was really helpful in school improvement projects around car line. And you can see that they use some of the feedback specifically to create resources and materials for their families. And then we can see that Kaylee wanted to talk a little bit here about how the feedback has been really helpful for them as they've created after school programs and care programs that help to bring people to school and get them there on time, but also help to elevate their experience. So in a moment, we're going to engage with our panel to talk through experiences that they've had using feedback in school improvement projects. And after that conversation, we'll summarize some of the tips for using a protocol. First, let's learn a little bit about this protocol. I believe that we have with us Kerry. Let me see, I'm just taking a look. I know Kerry had a little bit of a delay. Jasmine, is Kerry there? Oh, hey, Kerry, there you are. Awesome. So Kerry Swarr is on the Possip team. We're really lucky to have her, but she's also an education equity consultant. So a lot of our Possip reporters wear many hats. They're educators, they're consultants, they work in other arenas of education. And Kerry is bringing her consultancy background, as well as all of the research and work she's been doing on her recent dissertation that involves Possip, to this conversation. She got to partner with Howard University Middle School. We'll meet Kathryn and Corbet here in a minute to develop a research-based protocol for using family feedback in school improvement projects. So Kerry, before we dive in, I wanted to ask you if you could just give everyone a little bit of information about what inspired you to utilize this protocol and kind of create this protocol as part of your work.
Sure. Well, I have been a fan of Possip for a very long time, probably from the very beginning. So have always known what Possip was up to. And as a parent myself, and a long time professional in the education system, I just think it's a great model to engage family feedback in school improvement. So for sure, it was what I wanted to focus my dissertation on. So I got the chance to do that. You all let me, and I did develop a protocol so that multiple people at a school, including families, I was interested in what happens when families are also at the table reviewing a Possip report, what would change, and how the school will be improved. And so was definitely looking at protocols. I have this book. I know I don't think, there we go. Hopefully you can see it. By Joseph McDonald, The Power of Protocol. So I think most of you on the call are in the education field and know protocols are very common, but I thought, what if we created a protocol to review the Possip reports together? And so that's what I set out to do. And I made a very simple protocol that I'll just walk you through, and there's a blog that I wrote about it too. The first step was just getting everyone at the table. So this is school administrators, teachers, non-instructional folks, and families at the same table reviewing the Possip reports. That what do we know? What are we noticing? So some of the questions I had folks sort of think through is why should we care what families are saying here? And how can we better understand the impact of what they notice? And what is most of the feedback compliant? And what does that mean for building an equitable school? So really looking at the reports and what's being said with this noticing. So, and then had everybody actually write down up to 3 noticings and share them out loud. And it's meant to really look similar to, looking at a text. What is the text saying here and sharing it. Then we moved on to the next step. So then we go to the next step, which is, what do we wonder? So then you go into questions like, I wonder why, I wonder if, I wonder how, I wonder whether. So there's a lot more wonderings around what families are saying in the Possip reports. And then we moved on to step 3, to what do we suspect? What do we need to find out, right? So there's more information that we need to know. And so now what? So what are some of the themes? So I had the school improvement team, they sort of bucketed what they saw into themes. So then they could quickly see, where there's significant comments on certain themes that the school improvement team might want to tackle together. And then, do you have perspectives from the noticing and wonderings of others? So once you have folks from different seats at the school say different things and literally see different things from the reports, does that change your perspective on what you noticed? And that happened like repeatedly when we tried this out. And now what? So what should the school improvement team do with the report and what it's saying? So coming up with a list of action steps, recommended action steps together. And then also what other questions do we have? So one of the other benefits, I think, of Possip is the bonus question. So we had the school improvement team with this protocol develop bonus questions together to sort of go at, really try to find out more about what they were seeing from the noticing and the wonderings and the themes that they were seeing. So we quickly created those every time we met too.
And one of the things we can talk about as we get into the experience of the school leaders and some of the tips and tactics for implementing it, I really thought it was neat, Kerry, in the blog, you have kind of a decorum for how people interact with each other as well. Mm-hmm. So in the first step, in the noticing and the wondering, there's a suggestion that you could give people time and space to kind of answer these questions quietly and independently. And then when you get to step 3, that's when you can begin more of a dialogue. So it's kind of allowing people, no matter what their style of conversing is, or, how they like to show up in a room, everyone gets an opportunity to really sit back, think, and then to engage in a dialogue about your noticing and wondering statements that were shared. And you even have some decorum, like, each person kind of speaks fully before someone else speaks again. And when you do speak, build off the point that the person before made and really actively listening. So those are maybe some softer skills that can possibly make a real difference in people, how they show up in the room. I thought that was really interesting. Anything you want to say about that part, Kerry?
Yeah. And then the other thing too is that there was a facilitator, and it wasn't me. And there was a script that I wrote out, and we made sure that each time we met that it was somebody different. So school administrator one week, teacher another, family member the next. So we really tried to address some power dynamics that might be in the room that way. So I felt that was important too. The one thing that I think I missed was that I think, feedback can feel, and I wrote this in the blog, can feel personal. So having some norms up front to really make sure that everyone knows that this is a safe place. Yes, we might hear some feedback that might not feel the best, but we're all here around the table to do what's best for the school and the students here. So that's what the protocol really helps you do.
Yeah, and it really models this idea that there are different perspectives, which is of course what Possip honors. In reaching out multiple times to all of the people at your schools, we're looking to help elevate the diversity of voices in diverse languages, not just the loudest voices. And so the protocol helps schools and teams focus on, the different perspectives at the tables, and teams can quickly understand that family feedback comes with many perspectives and that it can be discussed and considered from many different perspectives as well. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea around this protocol that you can use in reviewing these reports and family feedback in general, noticing, wondering, and then stepping back for a dialogue to come up with some conclusions as a team that include lots of different perspectives. Thank you so much, Kerry. And we're really excited to include Kerry and others in a conversation that we're about to kick off. And so you can see here on my screen our beautiful team of panelists that we're about to engage in a conversation. And I'll just move through and invite those folks to the conversation one by one, and we'll kick into our conversation. So before doing that, I will point out that you all in the audience are a really important part of this conversation and an important part of this panel. We hope that you'll use the chat feature. My colleague Jasmine and our CEO Shawnee, as well as some other team members, are there to engage with you, to surface questions, and to help your questions also become part of the conversation. So please feel free to engage that way. We've got Kathryn Procope, the executive director at Howard University Middle School, joining us today, as well as Corbet Houston from Howard University Middle School, the principal there. We're also very excited to have Kristin Scotchmer here with us. This is the executive director at Mundo Verde Bilingual Public Charter School. And then, of course, you've met wonderful Kerry. And our final panelist is my colleague and friend, Jordan Jones. Jordan is a former middle school teacher, and he currently helps people in bringing Possip to their schools and in learning how to elevate the data for family feedback, using family feedback in projects. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and we'll get into the good stuff, and we'll get into the conversation. All right. Awesome. So I think I'm going to start with Kathryn, if that's all right. Kathryn, I was curious if you could let us know a little bit about what was the need that you were looking to address when you started this specific way of collecting family feedback with Possip?
Well, and good afternoon, everyone. One of the things that I've noticed with our families is that they sometimes feel like school is being done to them instead of them being a part of it. And so finding a safe way for them to provide feedback to us that we could use to improve what we do. We tell parents all the time we're not perfect and we can only get better with your help. But we often have parents who have had difficult experiences in schools themselves. And so being open to provide feedback is not something that they're going to do. The beauty of Possip is that it's anonymous. And so, and it's coming to their phone, and they're able to speak to something that's maybe a pain point for them, or really take some time to shout out someone that really made a difference in their child's life. And so we realize we get feedback from all spaces, but we didn't really have a good way to get that feedback from parents. I mean, I'm sure we're like most schools struggling to try and have a parent association, trying to find the right time for them to come, hosting Zoom meetings where you get 10% of the parents there, and you're still not getting that feedback that you need. And so the good part about Possip was it goes out. First, I was scared because it goes out every 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to get mad. No, because something happens all the time. And we have not had anybody complain because, I'm sure, I don't know who's on, or we do have parents who kind of block the school number when they get tired of us, and they take us off the email list or whatever. But with this, it didn't happen. And so it provided us with a way to really connect with our parents.
That's interesting, Kathryn. And actually, I've been working for Possip since the very beginning, but I got an aha from Kerry's protocol, because Kerry was even suggesting that sometimes you might experiment in your protocol meetings when you're reviewing with your team, anonymizing the feedback. And that's interesting because although as school leaders, we want to know who's saying what, it informs us. It is kind of interesting to see, would we be judging differently if things were anonymized? Would we say validate feedback that maybe we might have had some feelings towards? So I think it's really interesting to consider how anonymity can be a tool that we lean into sometimes. And of course, we allow people to share their name when they want to claim their feedback, and a lot of folks do. Thank you so much, Kathryn. And Kristin, I'd love to build on that with your team in Mundo Verde. because whereas Howard Middle started using this tool this year, you've been using Possip for a few years now. You've experimented with using it with staff. So I'm curious to know kind of what has kept you wanting to use this system. How are you seeing it continue to help inform your team?
Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you for having me here. And just excited to hear, Kathryn, how you're using it on your campus, at your school. We had originally, similarly, been looking for a way to have more voices regularly involved in providing us feedback. So while we might get 20 to 30 parents at a coffee or a parent association meeting, maybe 50 at a high, we have 200 to 400 participating in our Possip survey on a regular basis. And so just in terms of scale, why we keep using it as one reason is just it really does allow us this entry point that's low barrier, that's right in your phone, that comes on a regular basis and you know to expect it. It doesn't require as much time or education in order to, it's a very simple text. And we were also seeking a way to broaden the kinds of voices we were seeing and who has the time to come to a parent meeting at school, who might have the education to do a deeper dive, because we have done family surveys for years, but they're 20 questions. You really need to sit down and fill it out. And this was a way to simplify that. I don't think I answered the second part of your question, Caitlin.
Go for it.
But I think now that we're in, I think, our third year with Possip, what's been really exciting is we now have trend lines, and we can connect trend lines to specific moments in time. So I'll just give you an example. A low point in happiness when we looked at over months was January of 2022, where we had high numbers of students in quarantine and we had to return to virtual learning with the advance of Omicron. So we can really see that as a low point in our data. If we begin to approximate that again, we know something's going on, even if we don't know what it's going on. At that point, in January of 2022, we knew why people were less happy. But we can use that as a barometer for gauging happiness over time. We also now know September, naturally, we can attribute the sort of higher scores in September to excitement associated with being back at school. So we begin to get back up to those numbers at a different point in time in the year. We know that we're seeing things that things are generally going reasonably well. One of the things we've been able to do is demographic, beginning to really this year, with your help, right, do better about demographic. Understanding how groups of families, not to say that they speak for all families in that group, but just to be able to elevate voices of families we may not always hear from.
Yes, that is so cool. And I love hearing that because, you have been working with us for so long. So we're fortunate to get to hear what that impact looks like over time. Just for the folks in the audience, it might be interesting for you to know schools also lean into different departments with this data. So Kristin's team, they really leverage the communications teams in this data, and that the Possip reports are really close to what's happening in school communications. Whereas, we're so lucky to get to talk to Corbet in a minute from a principal perspective. So what's really neat about the data is that it can be spread throughout your school district network to different departments who can leverage it differently. And we do see it move to different departments and be utilized in different ways. So I'd love to take it to you, Corbet, to ask you, as a principal, you're in the building every day. What are you noticing? What are you wondering about when you start to read your Possip data? That's a big question. So you take it wherever you like.
So I want to go back to the school improvement team and meeting with Kerry. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone. And again, Caitlin, thank you for having me. When we went through the process of the school improvement team, it was very kind of scary to go through this process knowing that someone was going to be looking at what we're doing as a school. And it was very hard to listen to the feedback when Kerry brought out the protocol, I began to relax a little bit more and say, okay, fine, this is something that we need to do. We don't traditionally hear from a large portion of our parents, and we want to do this and do this right. Once we were able to get our first set of responses back from parents, it was very eye-opening because a lot of the parents that responded normally do not respond, or their voices aren't normally heard. So it was really interesting to kind of see those parents respond to the questions that we sent out. It was also refreshing to like sit and have a conversation about what questions make sense. Why do they make sense to put out there? And as a school, when we started to get the data back, I was able to share some of the data with the team, the entire school team. Some of it was very specific to teachers. And so those are like very like private conversations with teachers, because obviously we didn't want to put the data out there that was not about everyone else. And it was just specific to that teacher. So it was really refreshing to kind of get those perspectives and and work with Kerry to create some of those questions through her research.
That's so cool. Okay, you're taking me a different direction too that I want to lean into. You said that you were, having really interesting conversations about what questions should you ask. So I want to make sure everybody in the audience knows what that means. Jordan, will you chime in here and tell people a little bit about the bonus question? Because, we ask routine questions through Possip, which makes it like easy on you all because it's going to run no matter what, but you have the opportunity to engage with a special question. Jordan, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the bonus question is that customizable question that can come out each pulse check where you can craft a certain question that gets the information that you want to get for that particular section in time. And I think what's really cool is since you use Possip throughout the year and you're consistently giving parents that opportunity to share their voice, you can use the information you're getting in those Possip pulse check reports to say, okay, now next time, we want to learn about this, so we can craft the bonus question to ask that. It kind of goes back to Kerry's protocol where it's like, what do we wonder? And now if we're still wondering about that, we can go ahead and ask parents. We don't have to guess anymore. We can just ask them the next time the pulse check comes around.
That's awesome. Yes, I love that. It does go back to the protocol. So that's super cool. So Corbet, then bouncing back to you, do you want to share any of kind of the things that you might have asked as bonus questions or some of the things your team considered? And I'll pose that to Kristin as well. What are some of the extra learnings you were like, oh yeah, we can use Possip to ask about that?
Sure. I think one of the questions that we asked, if I can remember, was about students leaving, I believe. And Kerry, if you can remember, was it about students leaving the building every day and being able to cross the street or something? We have a situation where we're situated on campus where our students have to cross a busy street to get to the opposite side. And so it was a question around safety, I believe. I can't remember what exactly the question was, but it was a question around safety. And there were a lot of comments around how to tackle the safety issue that we have with students walking, going back and forth across the street. And mind you, those some of those recommendations were things that we have already done and we already still have in the works. So it was just interesting to see parents kind of leaning into this issue of safety at school as their children leave our building to get home safe.
Yeah. Kerry, did you want to say anything more about that?
I remember a few more. So one was like, how do your parents like to be communicated with? So
yes.
Email, phone, text, newsletter, that was a good one. The other one is this was the start of the school was, did parents need any help with any of the technology platforms in your school? Has a big one that's important that they know how to use, right? So that was another one that was important, I think, early on too.
The technology question was a huge question, actually. And it changed the way that we communicated with our parents as it relates to our technology. And so what happened as a result of that question, we started having bi-weekly meetings virtually with our parents on how to use the technology. And we also invited parents into the building as a result of that particular question.
That's awesome.
Didn't that also add to us changing the frequency of our progress reports sent home, because we made some assumptions. We do have a lot of technology, and parents actually get a text message about their child's progress, but clearly that wasn't working. So we, based on the feedback we got, we started sending those progress reports a little bit more frequently, which upset a bunch of kids around Christmas time. However, it was as a result of the data.
That's really cool. And I love you guys use some like key words that I really clued into, you know, the word like assumptions, right? And also, Corbett, you talked about how we knew some of these things, or we were doing some of these things. So what I appreciate about all of you is you really have an openness rather than feeling like tension towards it, realizing there's learning. Maybe you're already doing the things, but people are commenting because they don't know, or maybe there's assumptions that have been made that you can clear up on either end. So this openness to it is really interesting. Kristin, I know you've been doing it for so many years. So, but is there any like bonus question or extra learning that stands out to you?
There are two, thank you. One is what I appreciate about the platform, even in its simplicity as being a text, is the way that families can respond in open-ended language, and then the support you give us, as well as what our internal team does to then look at what that open-ended language responses do. So for example, we had, as many schools I'm sure did, quite a debate about when to begin to loosen up on mask requirements. We did not ask a question about, are you in favor or against masks? We asked a question, and we were able to construct a question that provided space for families to really give us feedback on their underlying concerns and sort of values relative to health and safety. And from there, we're able to construct a policy around masking that we felt really spoke to not should we mask or not, but what are the underlying concerns that families have about safety, and how do we elevate the voices of our most vulnerable families in that conversation. So it also allowed us to do that. More recently, now that we're in much, now that pandemic is hopefully firmly, fully behind us, we've shifted to much more of a questions related to the academic model. So we've got a fairly complex model. We've been asking questions around parent-teacher conferences to say, did you get what you need relative to understanding how your child's doing? More recently, do you understand what our core elements are in the model? And if not, what can we do to help you learn more? So simple things we've responded to with, we're going to be launching a spotlight in our family weekly newsletter. That's just a text that we have in the family handbook already, but who's going to read the 35 pages, pulling it forward and saying, did you know in a bilingual model, blah, 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 you might experience this. So the little spotlights, bite-sized pieces to respond to that. I'm not remembering the percentage, but the percentage of families who felt like they didn't understand our academic model well enough yet.
That's super cool. Thank you for those examples of, what you were noticing and wondering, and then how you got to actually respond to those wonderings. Kathryn, I would love to ask you a question. Have you noticed, and this will be interesting actually for Kristin as well, but have you noticed a change in your relationships with families since you've started, using this tool? Has there been any change to trust or transparency or culture? And again, these things take time, but just curious what you might think about that.
I think that the change is, I think parents feel more empowered because they feel this is giving them a way to hold us accountable. It's like, I told you, so I'm going to look for it. And Corbett talked a bit about the issue we have, because like he said, our building is right on Howard University's campus. And so we've always had challenges with dismissal, and mostly dismissal because parents come pick students up. In the beginning of the school year, that was a big comment from parents. And as a result of that, and it making us accountable, we changed the process so that we could make sure that we keep students safe. So I feel like it's given parents a sense of power and a sense of commitment to us, and knowing that when we do these things, when they give us information, that we're taking their feedback seriously. So I think that, yeah, it definitely elevated the trust level for us.
Wow, that's a huge thing. It makes me feel really rewarded in my work to know that people feel more powerful and empowered. That's a really big thing for people. Thank you. And Kristin, how about you? Have you noticed any changes to relationships with families in terms of transparency, trust, or just anything?
So some of the things we've noticed is just what leaders now have access to. So the trendline data I already shared with you, but sort of with leaders having direct access to that kind of regular data, but also a window into how individual family, what is the individual experience. So I think it's a really powerful way to balance and create empathy for what the family experience is. So for example, just something really simple might be that a concern that recess isn't taking place outdoors often enough. We have a very strong commitment to getting our students outside, but the window into that from just one parent's perspective, that it felt like it wasn't happening often enough, gave a leader the platform to say, hey, let me check in on the team to see like why that might be the case, or why the family's experience might be that. So I think that balance of data, trend lines, which really helps us have perspective on what's happening, but also the individual experience, I think creates a lot of empathy for that family experience.
That's so awesome. I'm going to ask Corbett a question next, but I want to tell the audience we have a little bit more time with Kristin, who has to hop just a slight bit early. So I want to go ahead and ask the audience, if you have questions you want to queue up for our wonderful team here on the panel, go ahead and start putting those in the chat and we'll start pulling some out. So Corbett, one of the things that we kind of talk a lot about with our schools and districts that we work with is, you get all this awesome feedback. It's so cool to hear how y'all are noticing and wondering and then asking more. How are you helping families feel plugged in to the fact that you've heard them and into your school improvement plans?
So I think one of the first things, we've always done this, but our parents have actually direct access to the leaders in the building. And when I say direct access, they can text us, they can call us on our phones. And so that has helped a lot. And so what I've found is, especially our parents that have multiple children here or that have had children here in the past, what they'll do is they'll text and ask questions around just about anything that's happening in school. Like, for example, with the safety issue, as far as where we're located and students leaving school and crossing busy intersections and streets, I was always getting text messages about what is happening with the crossing guard. Are we getting one? How can I help? Those sorts of things. Do I need to write a petition? And actually, funny enough, just yesterday, I got a parent calling about how can she help us get a crossing guard outside our school. And so because of the direct access parents know that they have, it pushes that level of accountability a lot higher than what we have probably felt in several years. And I'm okay with it.
Thank you. That's awesome. And Jordan, this might be an opportunity for you to share about the 360 scripts. Do you want to just take a minute? Because that is one way we help folks share back.
Yeah, one of the most important things about collecting feedback is letting people know that you're doing something with the information they're sharing. And so we have something what we call the 360 script, which is, we call it 360 because you're helping close the feedback loop. And what it is a customized template that you can easily copy and paste into an email blast or a newsletter that summarizes all the things we heard in your report. So it'll say how many people responded, some of the things that were said, encouraging families to continue to give that feedback. And if they haven't, that, hey, people are sharing, so this is your opportunity to have your voice heard.
That's awesome. I see we have panelists engaging with each other. So I didn't know if you guys wanted to call that out. This is awesome. It's great. Kathryn, did you and Kristin want to kind of bring that conversation out? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? What was your question, Kathryn?
I was curious because we're finding that we are enrolling more multilingual families, and they're coming, they've been bused in from Texas and Florida and from wherever else, and that's a really vulnerable population. And so building trust there is a very delicate thing. And so I was wondering, because I know that's a large part of Kristin's demographic, if Possip was helping in that way.
Yes, I believe it is. It's helping with them having access to the question and a platform from which to answer, a safe space to do that. It's also helping our leaders who may not speak Spanish see that in real time and in a quick way because of the way Possip can handle the translation coming back to us. So we spend a lot of time internally translating materials into both languages and back and forth. And so the fact that Possip has the ability to do that directly is very practically helpful with having our leaders connect to those families more directly.
That's awesome. So Corbet, I wanted to ask you one more question before we kind of just get into some tips about how folks can use this protocol in their work. Who all do you bring to the table within your school when you are reviewing this feedback?
So we start with myself, our executive director. We have some instructional coaches in specific areas. We also bring a couple of teachers that are leaders in their own right here in the building, and we also include parents.
How do you include parents?
We ask them to come out and sit and have a conversation with us. It just depends on whatever it's happening in the building and whatever it is we're talking about. Sometimes we'll send out questions, surveys, things of that nature, but now that we have Possip, we don't have to do that. We send it through Possip.
That's awesome. Okay, Kristin, and I know you'll have to hop soon, so if I can get one more question from you. I saw in the chat you were talking a little bit about the utilization of praise. So I would love to hear from you folks how you're using the praise, because that's a piece that makes Possip different. We want to elevate the positive gossip and the praise as well, and help to better your teams through encouragement. So if you could share a little bit about how you practically use it and share it.
Well, leaders review the reports every time they come in. And so I think that's I think being a school leader can be a pretty isolating space to be in. And so they just that ability to reflect and see the positive is really powerful. Beyond that, our team has created inspiration sheets and shared them more broadly as a way to ensure that folks at each campus are actually seeing the praise. And I think Kathryn, you started out this way. There's so much that we continue to improve on every day, and we know we're not perfect, but seeing some of the positive feedback really does create balance for our whole team.
That's awesome. Kathryn, anything you would share about the impact of praise?
It's so interesting how competitive teachers are. We're always laughing about that, but anytime, we have team meetings and we have shout outs, and we can shout out that, a parent, shouted out Miss Mary Smith because she supported her student. It's everybody wants that. It's so hilarious. So it really, and it does something for the teacher, because, parent, most of the time what you're getting 90% of the time is not positive, but then you do that one thing, and then right then they get the Possip text and they're able to do that. It changes the whole dynamic with the teacher.
Yeah, which then changes how they behave with each other and with parents. And we get in our heads too, something doesn't go perfectly and we feel bad. And we do Possip on our team. I get to say if I'm happy at Possip, and when I get praise or shout outs from another team member, somebody sends that my way. And I know it really helps to validate how hard everybody's working. So thank you so much.
Caitlin, I
yes,
just wanted
Kerry.
to jump in. Yeah, just to say, like, I think it's sort of human nature to zero in on the negative. Even, and I witnessed that working with Howard Middle School. So I remember saying, like, actually, in this, because of my experience with reporting, like, your parents are very happy at this school, actually, you know, because from the data and what I know at Possip too. So had to say those things. The other interesting thing was having the parent at the table. That parent was like, wow, they're really passionate teachers at this school. And I wouldn't have known that. I only know my kid's teacher. So, so bringing parents into, you know, with this protocol and reviewing reports, that, you know, that's an aha for families too, to be like, wow, everybody's working really hard, and they changed their perspective too. So that I want to share that.
Yes. And I loved how Corbett like set the scene with vulnerability, like that it was scary to get this. And we hear that a lot. And what's interesting is that can become a barrier for many, many months. Even after people are like, oh, I'm ready for Possip, that fear can be a barrier. It's like getting past that fear and actually reading the reports. It really changes the way you approach things and feel. So I love that, Corbett. So just as we close out, I had a slide, but y'all are much more engaging. I don't think we need it. We'll just close out with all of you, which is just, I want to ask Kerry, and then anyone else can tag in. And Kristin just left us. I said goodbye to her by the chat. So we really appreciate her. She had to go. But Kerry, what are your tips for other schools that want to implement this protocol and want to bring in feedback in their school improvement projects?
Yeah, I think one other thing that hasn't come up yet is that we actually tried it both virtually and Zoom, and we did in person, and it worked in both places. So this works in both. And we always only had 1 hour. So that was the other thing. It worked in an hour. Though I did get feedback once you get into the conversation. Some of the team members definitely, like, it would be really nice if we had some more time to really get into depth. So, you know, maybe a couple times a year, having those opportunities, maybe over a meal, to get into those more in-depth conversations that you typically don't have time for. But yeah, very easy to do, and everybody learned it quickly, got it. So in short amount of time and in many different venues. So.
Corbett, do you have any tips? Like, if you were talking to somebody about this, what would you say?
I think definitely be open to the feedback and to receiving it. And also, as Kerry just stated, we did both ways, but I think it's very important to probably explore the options of doing it both ways and not just one particular way. Because we did have some really great sessions, and also extending the time a tad bit and doing it more often. It was very helpful to have those conversations and to hear what other folks on the team had to say, normally that you wouldn't have the opportunity to have those conversations as in depth of the conversations that we've had.
That's amazing. Kathryn, you're going to close us out. Any tips that you want to share about using family feedback or the protocol?
When you have the protocol and you are bringing everybody to the table, search out your spicier parents. And it sounds like a strange thing to do, but the spicy parents are going to they're going to come, you know, angry anyway, which is okay. But just knowing that you want to really hear what they have to say, they're really going to give you some really good feedback. And teachers being involved in what's changing in the school and seeing that whole connection with the parents is really key. And Possip was a great tool to get to that depth so that we can change. And school improvement is exactly that. It's going to be here forever. So why not do it well?
Thank you so much. We love that, and just really appreciate all your experience and your generosity in this conversation. And so to the folks online, you see Jordan Wave is there. He's there for us. Jordan is going to be reaching out to all of you to share a recap blog. We'll reshare Kerry's protocol, and we'll be sharing some quotes from Kathryn and Corbett and Kristin. So we'll have some videos for you all to watch with snippets of their wisdom. So reach out to Jordan directly if you like, or respond to the email from him. And thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate having you here. And if you want to learn more, talk to these people, let us know, and we'll make sure that people get connected. And yes, Shawnee's a proud Howard alum, so she's shouting out. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. So glad you enjoyed it, Robinson. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kat.